Socrates was 70 years old when they handed him the cup of hemlock. He had spent decades walking barefoot through one of the most powerful cities in the ancient world, owning nothing, charging nothing, writing nothing. No building, no institution, no title. Just questions. And when Athens finally decided it had heard enough, he had one last chance to stop, to agree to be quiet, to leave. He refused. He drank the poison, and he changed the world forever. I have been obsessed with this man for a long time. Not the marble statue version of him, the real one. The stonemason's son who walked away from the stone. The soldier who stood calm in the middle of a collapsing army. The man who made the most powerful people in Athens look foolish in public and could not stop himself from doing it even when he knew exactly what it was going to cost him. What I want to share with you today is what Socrates actually believed, how he actually worked, and why he was willing to die rather than stop. Because I think there is more practical wisdom compressed into this one life than almost anywhere else I have ever looked. Let's start at the very beginning. Socrates was born around 470 BCE in Athens. His father, Socrates, was a stonemason or sculptor. His mother, Phanerete, was a midwife. He was not born into wealth. He was not born into the aristocracy. He came from working people. And everything he became, he built entirely from scratch. Not from inherited status, not from institutional support, not from anyone else's permission. He almost certainly started his adult life doing what his father did, cutting and shaping stone, hard, physical, unglamorous work. And at some point, gradually, through questions he could not stop asking, he walked away from the stone and into the marketplace. No one handed him a platform. No one gave him a title. He just started talking to people. But before the agora, there was the battlefield. And this is something most people do not know about Socrates. He served as an Athenian foot soldier, a hoplite, in 3 campaigns during the Peloponnesian War. At the siege of Potidaea in 432 BCE, Plato records in the Symposium that Socrates saved the life of the young Alcibiades during combat. And when it came time to award honors for bravery, Socrates deflected the credit and insisted Alcibiades receive it instead. That is not the behavior of a man who craves recognition. That is the behavior of a man who has already decided what actually matters. And then, at the Battle of Delium in 424 BCE, the Athenians suffered a devastating defeat. Soldiers were breaking and running. Alcibiades later described Socrates retreating with complete composure, walking calmly, looking around, clearly prepared to defend himself. Not panicking, not fleeing, just steady. Steady in the middle of chaos. That quality, that unshakable internal stability, would define everything he did for the rest of his life. Now here is the moment that changes everything. At some point in the 430s BCE, Socrates' friend Chaerephon traveled to the oracle at Delphi and asked whether anyone was wiser than Socrates. The oracle answered, "No one." When Socrates heard this, he did not celebrate. He was confused. He did not believe he was wise, and so he set out to disprove it. He went to the politicians, the poets, the craftsmen, everyone in Athens reputed to be wise, and he questioned them. What he found every single time was the same thing. They believed they knew things they did not know. They were not just ignorant. They were confidently, comfortably ignorant. And Socrates realized something. In Plato's Apology, he describes his conclusion. "I am wiser than this man. It is likely that neither of us knows anything of great value, but he thinks he knows something when he does not. Whereas when I do not know, neither do I think I know." I love this so much. He is not claiming superiority. He is claiming a very specific and very humble kind of advantage. He knows the edges of his own ignorance. And that, he decided, is what the oracle meant. Human wisdom is worth little, and knowing that is the beginning of something real. From that moment, he treated philosophical conversation not as a hobby, not as a career, but as a religious obligation. He believed Apollo had given him a specific mission. He had not asked for it. He could not abandon it. In the Apology, he tells the jury directly, "Men of Athens, I honor and love you, but I shall obey God rather than you." He had no school, no building, no institution. He worked in the open. The agora, the gymnasia, private homes, wherever Athenians gathered. Xenophon's Memorabilia records that he was available to anyone, regardless of wealth or status. Aristocrats, craftsmen, foreigners. He did not curate his audiences. He just showed up every day and started asking questions. And he charged nothing. Ever. This is one of the most consistently documented facts about him, and it is the sharpest possible contrast with the sophists, the professional teachers of his era who charged handsomely for their instruction. Socrates found this contemptible. He was not selling wisdom. He was not sure wisdom could be sold. His method was unlike anything that had existed before. The Greeks called it the elenchus, examination, or refutation. Someone would claim to know what a thing was. Justice, courage, piety, love. Socrates would ask them to define it. Then he would test that definition with questions and counterexamples. And the definition would fail, collapse, reveal its own internal contradictions. The person would be left in what the Greeks called aporia, a state of genuine, productive confusion. Most people hated this. He was making powerful people look foolish in public. He understood exactly how dangerous this was, and he continued anyway. He described his own work using the most personal metaphor available to him, his mother's work as a midwife. He called his method maieutic. He did not claim to put ideas into people. He claimed to help people give birth to ideas they already carried inside them. He was not a teacher in any conventional sense. He was something stranger and more radical than that. And he described his relationship to Athens in the Apology with an image that I think is one of the most honest self-descriptions in all of recorded history. "I am that gadfly which God has attached to the state, and all day long and in all places am always fastening upon you, arousing and persuading and reproaching you." Athens was the horse, large, noble, powerful, but sluggish. And Socrates was the insect, sent to sting it awake. He knew this made him annoying. He knew it made him enemies. He said it anyway, to the jury that was about to vote on whether he lived or died. That is who we are dealing with. Not a man performing philosophy. A man who had fused his identity so completely with the examined life that separating him from it was simply not possible. You could silence him, but you could not change him. So he had proven something to himself through years of those conversations. Everyone reputed to be wise. The politicians, the poets, the craftsmen, turned out to be the same. Confident, comfortable, wrong about the limits of what they knew. And Socrates had walked away from every single one of those encounters with the same conclusion building in him. And then he put it into words at his own trial. He said, "I am wiser than this man. It is likely that neither of us knows anything of great value, but he thinks he knows something when he does not, whereas when I do not know, neither do I think I know." That is it. That is the whole engine. He is claiming one very specific and very humble kind of advantage. He knows the edges of his own ignorance, and he decided that is what the oracle at Delphi had meant. From that moment, philosophical conversation was not a hobby for him, not a career, a religious obligation. He reported that an inner voice, he called it his daimonion, a divine sign, had accompanied him throughout his life, never commanding him to do anything, only stopping him when he was about to do something wrong. He was not a secular rationalist in any modern sense. He genuinely believed the gods had assigned him to Athens the way a general assigns a soldier to a post, and he intended to stay at that post. Now here is how that actually looked, day to day. He charged no fees, ever. This is one of the most consistently documented facts about the man. It is also the sharpest possible point of contrast with the sophists, the professional teachers of his era who charged handsomely for their instruction. Socrates found this contemptible. He had no school, no building, no institution. He worked in the open, in the agora, in the gymnasia, at private homes, wherever Athenians gathered. Aristocrats, craftsmen, foreigners, young men still forming their minds, and his method was unlike anything that had existed before in the ancient world. Here is how it worked. Justice, courage, piety, love. Then he would test the definition, carefully, patiently, relentlessly, with questions and counterexamples. Collapse. And the person would be left in what the Greeks called aporia, a state of genuine, productive confusion. Most people hated this. He was making powerful, well-regarded people look foolish in public. He knew exactly how dangerous that was. He continued anyway. He called his method maiutics, midwifery. He was not putting ideas into people. He was helping people give birth to ideas they already carried inside them but had never examined. He said, and this is paraphrased accurately from his discussions in Plato's Theaetetus, that he could not teach anybody anything. He could only make them think. And the goal behind all of this was not clever conversation. It was the soul. He told the jury at his trial, plainly and without apology, "I do nothing but go about persuading you all, old and young alike, not to take thought for your persons or your properties, but first and chiefly to care about the greatest improvement of the soul." That is his mission statement. Not philosophy as intellectual entertainment. Philosophy as the primary act of a human life. The soul is the real self. Caring for it, through honest examination, through the hard work of actually understanding what you believe and why, is the only thing that genuinely matters. Wealth, reputation, political power, secondary at best, dangerous when mistaken for the main thing. And from this came one of his most radical ideas: virtue is knowledge. If you truly understand what is good, you will do it. Evil, therefore, is a form of ignorance. No one does wrong willingly. They do wrong because they do not actually know what good is. This position, Socratic intellectualism, scholars call it, has been argued about for 2,500 years. But the logic is hard to escape once you sit with it. Thank you for listening to the story of Socrates. If you'd like more stories like this, make sure to subscribe and leave a comment on who you'd like to hear about next.